When everything sucks, when it feels like the worst possible thing has happened, when it feels like your mental illness is just crashing over you, terrible circumstances, horrible things have happened, the best thing that you can do is be patient. Now, I know how this sounds because the first time that I heard this advice, I didn't get it. But I want to dive into it today when everything sucks, when life is at its worst. Why being patient is the best option. Let's dive right in and see what happens. Welcome to Mark My Words. Mark My Words is the story of my journey from a place where I was shattered to where I could live again. So, like, share, and subscribe if you would. We've started getting the message out. A lot of people have been signing up. Welcome to all the new viewers. I appreciate you. Thank you for joining the conversation. I want to start today by describing the circumstance that I first heard this piece of advice to be patient. I tell my story a lot in front of schools, workplaces, a lot of different places. And I get to tell my story with a lot of different people. You don't ever go in by yourself. You always go in with another person. You hear their story as well. And I have to tell you, some of those stories have changed my life. Pieces of advice, strategies that people use, expressions that they use. Friends can't fix friends. Just completely turned on its head everything I ever thought about supporting another person, as in looking at another person with mental illness and knowing that I can't fix them. It lifted a weight off me, made my life so much easier when it came to dealing with other people. And it's pretty much uncountable how many of these little snippets I've picked up. But one of the most powerful, one of the most impactful for me was this: be patient. Now, you have to understand, I'd gone into this school to tell my story, and a little girl showed up. She was maybe 19, and to me, she looked like a baby. And honestly, I thought, there is nothing I'm going to learn from this little girl. So I'll listen to her story and then I'll tell mine, and that'll be a fulfilling day. And she mentioned this concept of being patient. And initially, I went, that's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. But as she unpacked it, as she talked about it more, it made so much of an impactful, so much of an impact on me that it's now part and parcel of my mental health strategy. So let's dive into what it means. So when you're having your worst day, mental illness symptoms feel like they're overwhelming you. Everything sucks. Nothing's working. You cannot see a light outside the darkness. You're in a hole. It's your worst day. You want to be angry. You want to cry. You want to hit someone. You want to scream. You want to damage yourself. That is the time that you need to be patient. Take, for instance, me. A couple of weeks ago, I got a massive kick in the guts, metaphorical kick in the guts. Somebody did something to me which threw my mental health into absolute crisis. And I don't want to go into how deep a crisis it was, but it was pretty deep. And if people hadn't intervened, I might have done something very, very dumb. What I'd forgotten was this idea of being patient. This idea that when the worst happens, when everything is terrible, it's just a moment. And if you wait a day, a week, sometimes a couple of weeks, things will become easier to manage. I reacted in the moment in this situation, and I blew up a lot of bridges for myself. I did a lot of damage to people because I responded through my mental illness. Now, a couple of weeks later, everything's subsided and I can see clearly, and I have questions, and I'm still angry and I'm still upset, but I'm able to think about it logically. Whereas at the time, I was overwhelmed by the experience and the feelings. I equate it to a tsunami coming in. And I've done a lot of research on the tsunami that happened at the new year in, I think it was 2000. I can't remember where, but it was in Indonesia. And the thing about a tidal wave is that there's a couple of steps in the process which really equate to mental illness. So, first off, you've got this lull, this quietness. In fact, on a beach, the water will seem to disappear. There was a famous tsunami in Japan where the water rushed away and everybody thought it was a gift from the gods. So, because all these fish were stranded. So, they were all going out getting these fish, not realizing that the water was about to crunch in on them. So, for me, I was at a time where I was very peaceful. I was actually assuming that things were great, not understanding that it was the quiet before the storm. Now, a tsunami doesn't hit like a giant wave. It we've seen the movies where the giant wave comes, it's 90 feet tall, and you have to water ski over it to survive. In reality, this tsunami just basically looked like a trickle of water. It looked like something normal, something everyday, something that they've seen time and time again. Water coming into the shore. And then the water doesn't stop. And it doesn't stop. And you're lulled into this sense of security where, oh, this will be fine. But then there's a point where the water just takes over and it picks up everything everything that's not nailed down securely gets wiped out, gets just crushed by this moving body of water. And that's what happened in my situation. Um, it felt like initially it wasn't like a crash. It wasn't like, in a restaurant, somebody dropped some glasses on the ground. So I was startled. It wasn't like that. It's like the circumstance happened and it just got worse and worse and worse. And it was out of control and I couldn't do anything about it. Now, thing about the being caught in a wave at any time is you feel like it's never going to end. Even if you're just standing on a normal beach and you get caught in a wave and you get thrown through the washing machine, it feels like it's never going to end. You don't know which way is up. You don't know if you're going to drown or if you're going to be safe. And especially if you're living with mental illness and you can't rationalize this stuff. See, in the water, I'm never nervous because a surfer told me once, and you get caught in the wave, blow a bubble, follow the bubble, that's up. So I had this logical little thing that I could do to deal with the situation. Now, most of the incidents that happen with my mental health, I have these little strategies. I'm able to go, okay, here's how you find air. Here's how you find your feet. Here's how you ground yourself. But when this tornado came, when the tsunami came, there was nothing I could do to stop it. It was a fait accompli. You can't wish that a tsunami is going to just stop because it won't. There's nothing you can do. You're caught in it. Now, of course, our first instinct is to try and survive, is trying to, do something to stop whatever it is that's happening from happening, to fix it somehow. But when you're in that mental health crisis, when you're in that moment, there's nothing you can do. There was nothing in this situation that I could do that would ameliorate or make my life easier I just had to tolerate the mental health symptoms, the tsunami of symptoms that were overpowering me. Now, lastly, with the tsunami, there's another natural process, and that's the water receding. When you're in mental health crisis, that is not the time to make decisions. That is not the time to even do anything. It's time to go into protection mode. Now, the people that survived the tsunami, that were caught in the waves, that didn't have a chance to run upstairs and be above the waves, they hung on to something, a tree, uh, a light pole, anything, and they hoped that it wouldn't break. And that's what I did. I found that I needed to just stand my ground somewhere, just hang on to something. And for me, what I hung on to was patience. I didn't do it well, but in the aftermath, now I'm like, you know what I should have done? I should have just shut my mouth, lived with the overwhelming mental health crisis, and then dealt with it later instead of fighting against it in the moment, trying to fix it, trying to defend myself, trying to make people understand my point of view, trying to, not be mad at my mental health symptoms. I made things a lot worse. This idea of patience comes down to the fact that everything will pass. Everything good will pass. You get $1 million one day. You're going to be high for quite a while. And then after a while, it's going to pass. And it's just going to be another thing that you went through. You're going to have a mental health crisis today. In a few days, it won't be as bad as it feels today because it always does. But if you learn to put patience in your toolbox, if you learn to say to yourself, and please, I am trying to remind myself of this today. This is as much about me as it is about you today. It's a reminder that when those horrible things happen, whatever they are, whatever it is that drudges up your mental health symptoms, it will pass. A day, a week, a month, it will pass and things aren't as bad. Now, I thought last week that my life was over. I thought that I had nothing to live for. I thought that my world had ended. When I chose to start to be patient is when things got better. The immediacy of the pain receded. The immediacy of the hurt receded. It's still there, but it wasn't as strong. It wasn't as powerful. I wasn't able to dictate my actions and my reactions. This idea of being patient can sound ridiculous. I know. I felt like it was when I first heard it. There is a famous video, and I think it's Tom Hanks, and he talks about how this too shall pass. But he talks about it as in everything will pass, the accolades, the awards, the money, the fame, the sadness, the depression, the anger, it will end. And when you can come to terms with that, particularly I've found with my own mental illness, it is life changing. When the worst happens, if I remind myself, just be patient. Now, it took 2 or 3 days for me to start reminding myself of this. Took 2 or 3 days before I was able to start going, you know what? This sucks and it's the worst, but it's not going to feel as bad in a day, a week, couple of weeks, whatever it is. So my advice to you today, if I have advice, my suggestion, what has worked for me is when you're having mental health crisis, when you're in that situation where everything sucks, Be patient. Do all the things that you have to do. Be mindful. Go speak to somebody. Seek help. Use your strategies. But in the back of your mind, be patient. Realize that this will pass. This will end. This may seem like advice that doesn't pertain to you. But just like me, when I was looking at this 18-year-old girl and she's given me this profound advice, I didn't want to hear it. How could this little girl know anything that could help me? I am 50 something years old. There's nothing she can say. And in fact, there was. It's such a wise thing. Wisdom doesn't come because you're special or because you're super intelligent. Wisdom comes because you're willing to listen, willing to learn. And that's something that this little girl taught me, reminded me that if I can't learn something from every person I meet, then I'm the problem. Everyone has something that they can teach you, something that you can learn from them. If you're willing to open up your heart and say, you know what? It might seem the most ridiculous advice in the world, but I'm going to try it. I go back to that metaphor of drowning. And yes, I've nearly drowned a couple of times. But in my recent years, um, there was a time when I got caught in a rip. And I don't get caught in rips because I understand ocean currents. But I did try and fight it initially. And I was quite frightened. I was on an open beach and um, I was thinking about sharks and I was thinking about it was getting dark and I was thinking about I'm going to be in the middle of the ocean. But because I knew what I was doing, calmed myself down, swam sideways, got out of the rip, knew that the tide was coming in, knew that all the forces were on my side. All I had to do was float and kind of direct myself when I could, find a current, find a wave, catch a wave. It was an extremely scary situation, but it was one that didn't terrify me and it didn't overwhelm me and I didn't panic because I had in my toolbox, you know what I need to do. And I didn't think of it like this at the time. Obviously, it was just, I got to be patient. I got to just, it's okay. Just stay calm, conserve your energy, keep your body on top of the water, do what you need to do to just keep yourself alive. If you need help, you'll be able to get it. But, knowing all the tricks, knowing all the tools, I was able to bring myself to shore. Now, I was exhausted, um, but it just ties in with that thought of just being patient when you have that mental illness, when everything sucks, angry and rightly frustrated. Just be patient. Seems incredible that such a small piece of advice could have had such a profound impact on my life that I hope you will have listened and maybe I've given you another tool for your toolbox. Again, I want to thank everybody for checking out Mark My Words. Thank you to all the people that are listening now that are, liked and followed and shared. Um, my biggest audience is in America, which I'm gratified. I did go to high school for a little while in America, so I have a lot of really, really great American friends. I also have a lot of people that listen in India, which I'm very, very grateful for. And it just reinforces for me how universal mental illness is. I was asked to speak at this place, and it was a multicultural festival. And I was the only white guy there. And I was like, what can I possibly talk about here? So I just started telling my story about living with mental illness and realized with how involved everybody was that mental illness is universal. Doesn't it isn't confined to boundaries of countries, nations, ethnicities. It's just this common condition that we live with. So, like, share, and subscribe. Thanks again. I very much look forward to speaking to you again next week. Bye for now. See ya. Thank you for listening to Mark My Words. I'd like to thank my producer, Meredith Brosnan, and also Torian, Kevin, and Lorraine. And I can't forget the band Adelaide, who allows us to use their song as our theme.